Right to the top of the tier list, Hu Tao is coming in very strong. We're going over everything you guys need to know right away, including some nuances around this character because she's not very hard to play, but she's very hard to understand how you need to build a team and also what sort of artifacts and weapons are going to be good on her and how you guys go about that, because every little sort of different nuance of a change is going to be changing how strong she's going to be for you on your account. This is because she's played in a lot of weird ways, and she takes advantage of a very strange mechanic in the game due to how different elemental combinations work when we're doing things like Vaporize or Melt. So let's get into this for you guys here. Hu Tao is based entirely around her E. This is where her big damage comes from. You guys know this by now because it's going to give you that HP to attack percent. It also imbues her with pyro damage, and very small nuances here. The normal attack is incredibly powerful. Now, this is because the normal attack cancels right into the charge attack for you on her charged attack animation. So typically you would do a charge attack with someone like Zhongli or Shangling or all those other characters, and they just kind of do their charge attack animation there. But for Hu Tao, she does this, and she just automatically animation cancels into her charged attack. So keep that in mind. This is gonna be very important later when we talk about a certain boy that you see on the team right now, one of the other best characters in the game, top 3 in my opinion. Yeah, you know the boy, Xingqiu, who's also on Hu Tao's banner there. So we'll talk more about that in a minute, but also small caveat as well, learning about her normal attack, charge attack. You can actually animation cancel out of her charge attack too, like with most characters in animations in the game. So you can charge attack and then just jump out of it and start spamming it just like that. Now, this is going to be pretty costly on your stamina, but it's going to be your best DPS combo overall. So keep that in mind as well as we're talking about Hu Tao. Moving into artifact selection here, guys, there's one set that stands beyond all of the other ones, especially if you are doing Vaporize or Melt. If you're doing Vaporize or Melt, which is what you're going to want to be doing with this character, because it really jumps her, it catapults her damage into the stratosphere here, is the Crimson Witch of Flame set. So the 2-piece here, pyro damage bonus, that's going to help you out because all your damage is pyro when you're under your elemental skill. Also on top of that, the 4-piece is very strong here. It increases Vaporize and Melt damage by 15%, and then using an elemental skill will increase the 2-piece bonus, that original 15%, by 50% of its original starting value. So it goes up to 22.5% there. Don't worry about the max stacks hitting 3. You're never going to hit that there. So basically, this is going to be a 22.5% pyro damage increase from the 2-piece. And then you're going to get that extra Vaporize and extra Melt damage, which is what you're focusing on with this character because she's a pyro character and it's the most broken mechanic in the game. So keep that in mind as well. Weapon selection here, there's going to be 3 weapons that really stand the test of time, the 3 best ones in my opinion. There's going to be like a 4th one as well if you guys have it. That's pretty good there. Obviously, you guys know that the Staff of Homa is incredibly powerful. It was made for her, and it's her best weapon, all things said and done, but there are some other ones that are incredibly strong here. You saw that I was using it earlier. It's the Dragon's Bane. Now, we're going to talk about the Dragon's Bane last because this really has to do with the combination of why she's so strong with Xingqiu, and there's just like this crazy thing. All of these things come together and it's incredibly powerful. So we'll touch on this one in a hot minute. But the other one that's also very strong, the other weapon archetype here, is the crit rate one. So like we have Deathmatch, and then obviously if you have access to it, Primordial Jang Wing Spear here are both very powerful for you. This is because they have critical rate on them. Now the Deathmatch here, the lowest attack spear for 4 stars that's in that sort of weapon archetype, she doesn't really care about that though because she's all about HP percent. The Deathmatch has an incredibly high crit rate, so it allows you to build her very easily, start hitting all of the things that we need to hit with this character because she's wanting to have HP percent, a little bit elemental mastery if you're doing Vaporize. On top of that, you want the critical hit rate and critical hit damage in your artifact selection. So let's talk about the main stats and our substats here for our artifacts. If you are not hitting the coveted 50 to 55% crit rate, you need to go and do that. That is step 1 to increasing your overall damage on any character in Genshin Impact. And you start wanting to increase your critical damage on top of that. So For your circlet here, if you are using a crit damage circlet and you can still hit that 50-55 crit rate, go for the crit damage circlet. If you can't hit that yet, right, you're still working on your artifacts, use a crit rate circlet so you can hit that 50-55% crit rate there. Obviously, we're going with the goblet here, pyro damage, amazing, keep that there. And then the sands here, now for the sands, I'm sure you are all expecting me to say HP percent 100% of the time, grand slam away, and it is an incredibly powerful main set to have. The other main set to have that is also exceptionally strong is Elemental Mastery when you're doing a Vaporize team. So if you have a really good Elemental Mastery sands while you've been farming up your Witch's End Time, don't throw it away. See if you can get some really good, crit rate, crit damage, HP percent subset as well. Very nice for her in the sand slot. And it's going to be incredibly powerful. Now, why is this so? And this is going to be more of a Xingqiu thing, and it's her strongest by far teammate. It's on the banner there. If you have the ability to work on him, do it. Okay, this is an insane stat for her. EM 324 elemental mastery here, increases vaporize and melt damage by 52.2%. And the way that this works out in the damage formula, it is very, 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 very strong. So if you had like a 38% elemental mastery bonus here, which is right around like I think it's like 100 in like 70 or so, elemental mastery 200 and something, right in there somewhere, it actually increases that vaporized damage bonus from the flat 50% damage bonus up to just over like 200% damage bonus. It's very, very, very strong. And that's just going to be an exceptionally strong thing for you guys to do there. Now, we're all going to talk a little bit more about stacking too much elemental mastery. You do not ever want to go over like 350-ish. You're going to start really seeing some diminishing returns, not on elemental mastery, the stat itself, but the diminishing returns on what you could be getting off of instead of going to 400, 450 elemental mastery, crit damage, crit rate, HP percent. So never really go over as like a soft rule of thumb, like 350 elemental mastery here. And this includes stuff from character buffs, right? We have other characters such as Albedo, who has an ascension here that will allow you to actually give your teammates 125 elemental mastery. We've seen a lot of other characters like that. Diona C6 has that. Sucrose can give elemental mastery to the team. So keep that in mind when you're building your team. We'll touch back on that in a little bit there. Now for substats and your artifacts, you guys have already guessed it. You're looking for a crit rate. Got to get that 55% magical crit rate somewhere in there. Crit damage, insanely stronger than HP percent on top of that there. So one thing to know about HP percent though is there are going to be two rules of thumb here, because her talent, the Guide to the Afterlife, it does have a cap on it, 400% of her base attack. So if you're using something like the Staff of Homa, she has very low base attack, 108. Staff of Homa has 608, so you're looking at 716 base attack, 400% of that, so you're looking at right around like a 2,800 and some change amount of actual attack you can get from your HP to attack conversion on her elemental skill. In that situation there, if you are at level 10 on your talent here for Guide to the Afterlife, 45,500 HP is right around there. I think it's a little bit more than that. It's actually the hard cap on getting attack from her elemental skill. If you have her constellation that gets this up to level 13, it's right above 40,000 HP to actually cap that out. So if you are, running like a 50,000, 55,000 HP Hu Tao build, you have a lot of HP that's not giving you any attack whatsoever. So keep that in mind, as well as you're leveling her up. You're eventually going to hit constellation, not constellation, but a level 10 on your talent here at some point in the future, and you're going to want to definitely make sure you're not going over those 40,000 or 45,000 HP breakpoints. And that's with the Staff of Homa. The 4-star weapons have lower attack, right? Lower base attack. So if you have something like the Deathmatch, then you need even less HP to hit that cap, right? Because then your cap is going to be not 608 plus 108. It's going to be like 400 and some change plus 108. So you have like 500, and instead of having like 2,800 and some change total attack that you're capped at, it's going to be like 2,500 attack that you're capped at there. So you don't really need that much HP to fully cap her out. You're gonna be looking at something, like 40,000 HP at level 10 skill. If you have a level 13 skill, now you only need to get like 35,000 HP before you start not getting any attack from her talent beyond a certain HP percent. So keep that in mind as well when you're looking for gear for Hu Tao. You don't need 40% HP substat on all your artifacts. You're way over the cap if you have that on everything. Look for crit rate, crit damage, HP percent if you can get it. And elemental mastery isn't the worst stat in the game either. Or on elemental mastery, and specifically the Dragon's Bane. This is a weapon that's going to shine specifically in one circumstance, and this is really in a Vaporize spam team with our boy Xing Cho. Now, why is this? This is because the ability on it is based off of having hydro damage on your enemy, or pyro damage. And then on top of that, it has elemental mastery itself, and just talk about how that is a very good stat there. But it's even better than that. This is because in Genshin Impact, you guys know how elemental combinations work. You guys know about Vaporize, and you guys know about the good big melt damage that you see pyro characters do all the time. Now you guys know about how they do different damage bonuses based on which order you apply those elements in. So if you guys don't know that, Vaporize, for instance, if you apply pyro to the enemy and then you proc Vaporize by doing hydro damage, you get a 100% base bonus damage effect. If you do it in the reverse order, where you have hydro on the enemy first and then you do pyro damage, you get a 50% damage bonus on your hit. So it's lesser. Now, the other thing to note about this is that when you're using these different elemental combinations like Vaporize, like we're doing with Hu Tao here with Xing Cho, the ones that are the 50%, the weaker ones, they have this weird effect in the game where the effect kind of lingers a little bit longer, and you can take advantage of this with what we talked about with Hu Tao in her charge attack animation cancel, her normal attack into the charge attack into the jump. This goes off just quick enough that you can actually double Vaporize on her attacks, which makes her really strong with Xing Cho, because now we're getting all of these different factors coming together where you can go ahead, you use your charge attack, which does the automatic normal into charge cancel for you, and it still counts as using a normal attack because it automatically adds it in there for you, which procs Xing Cho's elemental burst source to come out, put hydro on the enemy, and then you hit him with your charge attack and your normal attack, double Vaporize, then you jump, animation cancel, do it again over and over and over again, and you can land double Vaporizes. Very, very, very high success rate of doing that, and it's a lot of damage there because you have elemental mastery from the Dragon's Bane. The enemies have either hydro or pyro on them as you're doing the Vaporize, so you get the damage bonus from your R1 or R5, whatever it is, Dragon's Bane, and it's incredibly powerful in this sort of combination there. So this is very, very, very good stuff. Now, how much better is it than the other weapons? So the top 3 weapons you guys should really be using is, if you want an ease of access build, Deathmatch is a very good ease of access build. It doesn't rely on using, you know, Xing Cho or any other certain elements in your party. If you just want to go out there with Hu Tao and just hit things and hit them over and over and over, you're not really an elemental guy, you don't want to do Vaporize, you don't want to do Melt, then Deathmatch can be really good for you. Easy to build that big crit rate. Now, if you don't have the Deathmatch, but you have something like the Primordial Jade Wind Spear, that's going to be good for you as well. Slightly higher base attack, still has crit rate on it, and it's going to allow you to get that stacking damage bonus, so all your damage gets that 12% damage bonus on top of everything else. Now, the attack percent bonus isn't the craziest thing, because remember, she's got really low attack, base 108, not the highest thing in the world, but it still is an ease of access build for you guys, because this does have that critical hit rate, 22 point some change. Now, the other one, ease of use, also works in any sort of build you want to do. You want to use Vaporize, you want to use Melt, you want to not do that. Staff of Homa is incredibly strong there. You're going to need to get some critical rates compared to something like the Deathmatch, because it has crit damage on it instead, but you can solve that quite easily with a crit rate circlet early on until you start getting a bunch of artifacts that maybe have crit rate as the substat there. So another very strong weapon for her there. And then the Dragon's Bane is worse than all of the other weapons unless you're doing Vaporize. Not Melt, just Vaporize, and it really only shines that much with Xing Cho. Now, if you are doing this, it is an incredibly powerful weapon, and it can almost stand toe-to-toe with Staff of Homa. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit better than Staff of Homa in certain situations. Now, these situations are going to differ. In the way that they differ, it's very nuanced. It's why she's kind of a complicated character to kind of use and build if you want to mathematically make her the most perfect that she can be on your account, because it's going to change up which one's better. Dragon's Bane R1, R5, R1 Staff of Homa, which one wins out in the end here, and it's going to be dependent on how much natural elemental mastery you have on your gear, or if you're using characters in your party that can give you elemental mastery for free. The more elemental mastery you have as your artifact main stat, artifact substat, buffs from characters in your party, maybe like Sucrose, maybe like Albedo, the better Staff of Homa gets in comparison to the Dragon's Bane. But If you're not using those characters, you don't have elemental mastery on your gear, then the Dragon's Bane shines more. This is because the more you add elemental mastery to a weapon that doesn't have any of it in its build, the more that elemental mastery has a bigger impact in weight in the total damage that you're doing. Whereas the Dragon's Bane, it already has a bunch of elemental mastery, especially if you get this bad boy to 90. It's got 227 or something, somewhere around there, 220 something elemental mastery. And like we said before, you don't really need to go over, you want to try to avoid going over 350 elemental mastery, because at that point you could be getting more returns on your damage from stacking critical hit rate, critical hit damage. I know you guys hate it for when I say critical hit rate, blame Diablo, okay, but that's just how it is. And hopefully you guys can really fully grasp and realize that concept, those of you who've made it this far into the video, who haven't just skipped along trying to find out the things that they thought they wanted to know instead of things that they need to know. Anyways, guys, but that's how that's going to work out. So if you're using Dragon's Bane, make sure you're using Xingqiu. Don't go over that 350 elemental mastery. If you are using Staff of Home, use it however you want. It's still incredibly powerful and does beat out the Dragon's Bane still. It's like 5% more damage, maybe up to like 9%, depending on your exact artifact specifics or who you're using in your team with your Hu Tao Xingqiu combo there, right? If you're using Albedo, Staff of Homa gets even better. It goes up to like 9% more damage or so, 10% more damage or so. If you have more elemental mastery in your gear, that's going to inch it up to being that much more better. But it's not infinitely better. It's not 50% damage bonus. So if you have a big Dragon's Bane around, you want to use Hu Tao, and you don't want to feel pressured into pulling for Staff of Homa, don't. You're just gonna have to play with your boy Xingqiu. We're gonna do another video on Xingqiu. That's not gonna be a part of this video, so you guys can know how to build him there. Sacrificial Sword, all that good stuff. Fantastic stuff for you there. And when it comes to other characters that are really good with Hu Tao, animal characters, especially Venti, are incredibly powerful with Hu Tao. Sucrose is also good as well. And obviously, guys, this is because of the Viridescent Venerer set, right? You get that 40% pyro damage resist down when you're swirling pyro damage. Venti is easier to use because you can throw out his ultimate, his elemental burst, and then you can swap it to Hu Tao. And then you can force Venti to absorb Hu Tao's pyro element, and you get that damage bonus down. Sucrose is a little bit harder to use, even though she is exceptionally powerful, because she can give a lot of elemental mastery. The caveat with Sucrose, though, is that you have to use her elemental burst, you have to use her elemental skills to proc the swirl after Hu Tao applies the pyro damage, which you can't do, because if you leave after you put on her E-skill buff, it goes away. So what you need to do if you're running Sucrose, you need a secondary pyro character. Bennett's kind of a nombo. Maybe if you have Klee in there, that could help out as well. Maybe Xinyan for the shields. You need a secondary pyro character, though, to put pyro on them, and then you swap into Sucrose, and then you swirl them, and then you go do your work with Xingqiu and Hu Tao in there. So keep that in mind as well when determining which of the two animal characters you want to use there. We talk about Albedo being very strong. Zhongli is also very strong. Big barrier, right, to keep her safe while she's out there. And then on top of that, 20% less pyro resist while that barrier is applied. So another very powerful character for you there. If you want to do a side DPS sort of weird thing, different sort of team comp, Ganyu can be very, very powerful for her as well. Right, she can allow Ganyu to melt. Ganyu can allow her to melt, although melt's not really the craziest thing there. But you could maybe melt Hu Tao's elemental burst with Ganyu. That's going to be a cool thing and a cool video that we're going to be putting together. So if you want to see that, make sure you come back for more. Bennett here is a little bit of a nombo, though, right? Because you want to be trying to DPS as much as possible, sub 50% HP. So he'll give you that big flat attack bonus. He'll give you that 800, 900 attack bonus, but you're going to be losing a couple things, especially if you're using the Staff of Homa. If you're using Staff of Homa, you're not getting this sub 50% HP on the staff. Also on Hu Tao herself, she does have 50% or less HP, gives her 33% increased pyro damage bonus there. And also you get a higher mod on her elemental burst there on top of that. So a little bit of a nombo there, but if you really want to run the double pyro, you really want to use Bennett, right? And it's your only way to kind of use Sucrose you could think about there, but it's not gonna be the best combination in the world. Now, one last thing on her DPS, how do you use Spirit Soother? Very interesting. It's not that hard. You just use it at the end of your elemental skill when you're healing as necessary. This is because you want to maintain sub 50% HP. And this can, especially once you level guys up to like level 10 on this, it's going to give you 12% or so HP per enemy hit up to a cap of 5. So you can get back around 50% of your health in an AoE situation. So she's very good at healing herself back up with her own elemental burst when there's multiple enemies around. If there's a single target though, she's going to need some help to get healed back up. And on top of that, guess what? Your boy has her covered there too because of hydropathic here. So you want to build him for a little bit of HP. We'll touch more on that later though in a different video. Xingqiu is just so good for her, right? Gives her all the damage, gives her some healing, gives her some damage reduction as well when those rain swords are shattering. So it's gonna help her live a good bit there. So hopefully you guys learned everything you needed to know about Hu Tao in here with some of the math that popped up. As well, if you guys have any questions on that, go down in the comment section down there and leave them. Also tell me how you guys have been using your Hu Tao. And as always, if you want to see more Genshin Impact content and coverage, make sure you subscribe for more. And if you did find this video informative for you guys, do leave that like out because you do not know how much that helps out here on the channel. It's the best thing you guys can do is like and comment, even if you don't want to subscribe. So thank you so much. Have fun out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.